Today's case is one that has haunted Philadelphia for more than a decade. And honestly, it's one that still keeps people up at night. Because how does a death that was first ruled as a homicide somehow get changed to suicide? Even after years of lawsuits, appeals, and independent experts taking a second look, the truth is still tangled in questions. This is a story of a young woman found in what many call an impossible crime scene, locked inside her own apartment from the inside, yet somehow stabbed more than 20 times in the head, neck, and chest. It's emotional, it's frustrating, and it's the kind of story that makes you question, how could this ever happen? This episode discusses violent death, suicide, and mental health, so please listen with care.
Before we dive in, make sure you're subscribed wherever you're listening. It really helps us keep telling these stories.
And if you would like to support our show, you can listen completely ad-free on our Patreon at patreon.com/crimesalad podcast or on Apple Podcasts. And while you're there, leave us a quick positive review on Apple Podcasts. It would mean so much to us. I'm Ashley.
And I'm Ricky.
And this is Crime Salad.
This case is so chilling because at first glance, nothing seems to make sense. We have a 27-year-old teacher. She's found dead in the kitchen with a knife in her chest, with the door still locked from the inside. The decisions that the police and experts have made has sparked 14 years of controversy and public outrage, especially with a new development in the case that just came days ago.
Ellen Rae Greenberg was born on June 23, 1983 in New York City. She was the only child of Joshua and Sandy Greenberg. They devoted their lives to giving her every opportunity they could. When Ellen was around 11 years old, the family moved from New York to Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, where she attended Susquehanna Township Middle School. And from the start, Ellen was known for her warmth. Friends described her as bright, kind, and endlessly patient. After high school, Ellen went on to attend Penn State University, where she studied communications. And during her time there, she worked a job that welcomed athletes and their families, helping them to get to know the campus and even assisting on the football field during games. Everyone who worked with her said she was dependable and always smiling, showing up early and staying late. She graduated from Penn State with her degree in communications and initially thought she might have wanted to become a speech pathologist. But as she started down that path, she realized that it wasn't quite what she was meant to do. So Ellen pivoted and enrolled in night classes at Temple University so she could earn her teaching credentials.
And it was clear that Ellen's true calling was teaching. So she began teaching first grade at Juniata Park Academy in Philadelphia. It was a tough environment, but her colleagues described her as dedicated, patient, and loving, going out of her way to make children feel safe. And it's pretty clear that Ellen was a beautiful person.
Mara, a former neighbor, said Ellen was outgoing and full of life, someone who always had people around her. Mara also said that Ellen had a voice that was raspy, which was funny because her personality was so sweet and she was so bubbly. And the doorman at the apartment she lived in before her tragic death remembered the little things about her voice, her laugh, her big smile, and how Ellen offered to make him chili one day. She was thoughtful and warm, even in the smallest interactions. And it's important to hold on to that image of her because it's so easy in these types of cases for a person to get reduced to how they died, picking apart every detail of what happened to them. But Ellen was someone who really made an impact on people. Nancy Schwartzman, the filmmaker behind the docuseries about Ellen that came out earlier this year on Hulu, even said no one had a bad word to say about Ellen. It's also easy to make a martyr out of someone where something so devastating happened. But she said that everyone said how fun Ellen was, how she was engaging, dynamic, and well-loved. She was a 27-year-old woman who loved her family, wanted to get married, and was excited about the future. She loved fashion, loved her students, and had a joy that everyone remembered.
And Nancy also talked about how close Ellen was with her family, her parents, her grandmother, her cousins. They were a really tight-knit, loving family. And that's part of what makes her story so tragic. What happened in 2011 didn't just take Ellen's life, it shattered the worlds of everyone around her, especially when there's so many unanswered questions.
Yes, it's one of the most confusing cases I've ever seen. So let's start from the beginning and set the scene. In 2007, Ellen met Sam Goldberg through a mutual friend, and they went on a blind date, and over the years, their bond deepened. By June of 2010, after about 3 years together, Sam proposed during a trip to California. He asked Ellen in a romantic moment on the beach, and she said yes. That set them on course towards a wedding planned for August of 2011. And not long after their engagement, Ellen and Sam moved into a modern apartment on the 6th floor of a building with a beautiful view of the Schuylkill River in Philadelphia. It was in Manayunk, a part of the city they both came to know as their home.
Now, who is Sam Goldberg? The public record tells us a little bit. At the time of Ellen's death, he was around 28 years old and working in media. He was an associate director for NBC Sports when he met Ellen, according to his LinkedIn page. Sandy, Ellen's mom, described Sam as very charming, charismatic, and respectful.
Yeah, there's not much public information about him, but we can discuss the nature of their relationship. According to the people in Ellen's life, a lot of them noticed that there were changes in Ellen's behavior after she started dating Sam. Her best friend, Allison, recalled that Ellen was spending more time with Sam and his family and less with her own friends. She said that Ellen was closed off about her wedding plans and didn't share much. Colleagues of Ellen's also said that Ellen almost never wore her engagement ring. But according to Ellen, it was because it rolled around her finger and bothered her during work. Besides that, what we know about Sam is very limited, and he didn't say anything about Ellen until 2024, which we'll mention later. But during this relationship, Ellen's behavior and mood continued to change. By December of 2010, Ellen's loved ones began to notice the cheerful, calm, and grounded woman they always known was becoming more anxious and constantly on edge.
And this wasn't just any ordinary time in Ellen's life. She was planning a wedding, managing a classroom at an inner-city school, which she described to those around her as tough, and trying to balance it all in the middle of winter, a season that can take a toll on anybody's mental health. The stress was just piling up.
Right, and when her parents asked what was going on, Ellen told them it was mostly work. She said that the pressure from teaching and planning her wedding was starting to feel overwhelming. But at one point, Ellen sent her parents a surprise text that read, "I want to leave this place. Get me out." And not long after that, she reached out to a cousin who lived in Philadelphia and asked if she could stay with her for a while. When the cousin asked if Sam would be coming too, Ellen didn't respond. We may never know what she was feeling in that moment, but it's clear that something in her current living situation was unsettling. And as her anxiety kept getting worse, her family encouraged her to get professional help. So Ellen did. She started seeing a psychiatrist and met her several times throughout January of 2011. Ellen's psychiatrist ended up prescribing her 2 medications, Klonopin to manage Ellen's anxiety and Ambien to help her sleep. For a short while, it seemed to help, and Ellen told her family that she was feeling better.
But even though she said that, the people closest to her couldn't shake the feeling that something deeper was wrong. Ellen's parents and friends later said that she seemed fragile, more uncertain than ever, like she was trying to convince herself that things were okay. She was doing everything that you'd hope someone would do, reaching out, seeking help, trying to take care of herself. But that didn't help to stop whatever was building beneath the surface.
Yeah, like you said, she was doing all the right things, taking every step to protect her peace, and yet something was still pulling her under. No one realized just how dark things were about to get. On January 10th, investigators would later find that Ellen's computer was used to search terms like quick death. There was also an opened article on euthanasia and a visited website about painless suicide. But when Ellen met with her psychiatrist 2 days later, the psychiatrist's notes reflected a woman who was still very much trying to gain control of her life. She wrote that Ellen wants things in control, that she was anxious and not sleeping, mainly due to her job. 5 days after that, she had another session where the notes were a mix of progress and frustration. Ellen told her psychiatrist that she wanted to quit her job, but both her mother and her fiance didn't want her to. She also noted that Ellen could get out of her contract if she wanted to, but that she was in a state of spiraling due to her anxiety. But out of all of this, the most important thing that the psychiatrist noted was that Ellen was not suicidal. By January 19th of 2011, Ellen reported to her psychiatrist that she felt much better. And the notes said that Ellen felt 75% better, and she agreed that she could get through until the end of the school year.
So from the outside, it seemed like Ellen was starting to turn a corner, finding her footing again. Because a few days later, Ellen mailed out her save-the-date cards for her wedding, which was set for August 13th of that year at Hotel Hershey in Hershey, Pennsylvania. That same day, Ellen went out to help one of her close friends shop for a bridesmaid dress for her wedding. During it, she started to cry and told her friend that she wasn't herself, but she was trying to get it together. It's kind of heartbreaking in hindsight. She was trying to reassure everyone, and probably herself, that she'd be okay. But things were obviously still really hard for her.
And that brings us to January 26th of 2011, the day that everything changed. On that cold morning, winter had already begun to press down on the region. Snow started falling across Philadelphia, and in the first wave of the storm, the region picked up as much as 6 inches of accumulation. By noon, the city was under a gray, heavy sky, and road crews were scrambling. That afternoon, Ellen received a text from a friend, letting her know that school was letting out early because of the weather. And she replied, "Thank goodness." At 1:15 p.m., Ellen left work and began her drive back to the apartment she shared with her fiancé, Sam Goldberg, at the Venice Lofts. Her next stop was just 11 minutes later at 1:26 p.m., where surveillance and transaction records show Ellen stopping for gas on Umbria Street. She spent $41.20 at pump number 4, topping off her tank with nearly 13 gallons of fuel, enough to make sure her fuel lines wouldn't freeze in the cold.
So what's interesting here is that she's thinking ahead, planning for the storm. She's doing little things to stay safe. And it's such a simple act, but it says a lot about where her mind was that day.
Exactly. And after that, Ellen then went home, and at 2:30 p.m., she made a quick call to a local restaurant. 2 minutes later, she made another short call that lasted only about 30 seconds. Once she was home, Ellen logged onto her school system remotely and entered her students' grades, something that I'm sure was part of her normal routine. At 3:47 p.m., Ellen sent what would become her final text message, a casual conversation with a friend. And after this text is where things shift in a strange way. About an hour later at 4:45 p.m., Sam Goldberg left their apartment to go to the on-site gym. And there's surveillance footage from the apartment complex capturing him walking into the gym alone. What is interesting here is that 1 minute after he left, records show that Ellen used her laptop for the final time. At 5:30 p.m., Sam Goldberg finished his workout and he left the gym. When he got back to their apartment on the 6th floor, he tried to open the door, but the swing bar latch on the inside was engaged, so he couldn't get in. And he started texting Ellen over and over again, things like, "Open the door. What are you doing? I'm getting pissed. You better have an excuse. You have no idea."
And this goes on for about 40 minutes. Texts, calls, pounding on the door. Neighbors later said they could hear him yelling Ellen's name around 5:45 p.m.
And when there was still no response at all, Sam ended up calling his cousin, who is an attorney, to explain what was happening and that he was locked out and Ellen wasn't answering. So Sam's cousin suggested that he go to the building security for help. So a little before 6 p.m., Sam, he went downstairs to the lobby. He asked the doorman if he could help break the latch. The doorman refused, saying that it violated building policy, but he offered to give her a call and also get a hold of maintenance. So at 6:07 and again at 6:10, Ellen's phone was called from the apartment complex lobby line, but she didn't answer either time. And by 6:14 p.m., Sam was back on the phone with his cousin, updating him that the doorman wouldn't help. Then at 6:23 p.m., surveillance captured Sam re-entering the elevator to head back up to the 6th floor. So by now, we've got almost an hour of unanswered calls, texts, and attempts to get help.
And that's a pretty long window, one that people have tried to pick apart for years, trying to figure out what was going on behind that locked door.
Right. So now it's 6:26 p.m. Sam received another call, this time from his uncle, who, like Sam's cousin, was also an attorney. They told him to break the latch and go inside, then immediately call 911. 2 minutes later, the building's surveillance footage shows Sam heading upstairs again. By 6:30, still on the phone with relatives. Sam reportedly forced the door open and stepped inside apartment 603, finding what would set off one of Philadelphia's most controversial investigations. He saw Ellen. She was slumped on the kitchen floor, leaning up against the cabinets. And on the other end of the phone, Sam's cousin and uncle heard him scream, and they immediately told him to hang up and call 911.
Help! I need a emergency now. I just walked to my apartment. My fiance's on the floor with blood everywhere.
What is the address?
4601 Flat Rock Road. Please come. Help now.
4601
Flat Rock Road.
Is this a house or apartment?
Oh no! Oh no! It's an apartment. Please hurry, please.
Where is she bleeding from?
I don't know. I can't tell.
No, sir, you have to calm yourself down in order to get you some help.
I'm sorry.
Okay.
I don't know. I'm looking at her right now. I can't see anything. There's nothing broken. She's bleeding. Ellie!
You don't know where she's bleeding from? Can't tell where
Ellie!
the blood's coming from?
I think her head. I think she hit her head, but it's everywhere.
Okay, sir,
It's everywhere.
She might have fallen. Do you know what happened?
She may have slipped. There's blood on the table. Her face is a little purple.
Okay, hold on for rescue for her. Stay on the phone. What's wrong?
I went downstairs to go work out. I came back up. The door was latched. My fiance's inside. She wasn't answering. So after about a half hour, I decided to break it down. I see her now just on the floor with blood. She's not responding.
Okay, is she breathing? Look at her chest. I need you to calm down, and I need you to look at her chest. It's really.
I really don't think she is.
Listen to me. Someone's on the way. Look at her chest. Is she flat on her back?
She's on her back. So I bring her.
Look at her chest and tell me if it's going up and down, up and down.
I don't see her moving.
Okay. Do you know how to do CPR?
I don't.
Okay. I can tell you what to do. Okay, until they get there. I want you to keep her flat on her.
God.
Hello.
Yeah, hi, okay.
Are you willing to do CPR with me over the phone until they get there?
I have to, right?
Okay, so get her flat on her back, bare her chest, okay? You want to rip her shirt off, okay? You need to kneel down by her side.
Oh, my God. Ellie, please.
Listen, you can't freak out, sir, because you
Okay, I'm trying not to. Her shirt won't come off. It's a zipper. Oh, my God, she stabbed herself.
Where?
She fell with a knife. Oh, no, her knife's sticking out.
Her what?
There's a knife sticking out of her heart.
Oh, she stabbed herself?
I guess so. I don't know where she fell on it. I don't know.
Okay, well, don't touch it.
Okay, so I just let her down here now. I mean, what do I do?
No, I mean, you can't. If the knife is in her chest, it's going to be kind of hard for you to do CPR at this time.
Oh, no. Oh, my goodness. Okay.
Police, which operator? 277.
Is someone coming here?
Yes, they are. You said 4601 Flat Rock, right?
Yes.
Okay, someone's on the way. And the knife is still inside?
Wait, so what?
The knife is still inside of her?
Yes, I didn't take it out.
Was it her chest or what area?
It's in her chest. It looks like it's right in her heart.
Okay, someone's on the way out there. Okay, just get.
Oh my God! Okay.
How old is she?
She's 27.
27, and there's no sign of life at all.
No, please don't be. What?
Pinch her under her arm and tell me if she responds to pain.
Ellie. She's not. Her hands are still warm. I don't know if that means, but there's blood everywhere. I mean.
I know, but you can't, and the knife is still inside of her. How far? Can you see how far it went in?
It looks pretty deep.
Okay.
It looks it's a long knife.
Don't touch anything. Yeah, don't touch anything, okay?
I'm not touching anything. I can't believe this, though.
So wait, it was just you there with her?
We're the only ones here.
And she ran in the door, you said latched it shut?
No, I went downstairs to work out, and when I came back up, the door was latched.
Oh.
Like it was, it wasn't like it was, it was like locked from the inside, and I'm yelling, So I'm
Was your house
yelling and
broken into?
No.
So there's no sign of a break-in?
No sign of a break-in at all. I mean, there will be when you get here because I had to break the latch, but to get in.
Okay, 46-year-old.
A woman found slumped on the kitchen floor, a knife still embedded in her chest, which sounds like a clear homicide scene. But within hours, investigators would begin to question that assumption. And years later, those questions would only multiply.
So when this call ended, emergency responders were already racing towards Venislav's. At 6:36, emergency responders arrived. Inside the apartment, they found Ellen Greenberg seated on the kitchen floor, wedged between two corner cabinets. And she was in a semi-upright position, and a serrated kitchen knife was plunged 4 inches into her chest. A strainer filled with fresh blueberries and an orange that was just sliced sat on the counter. 2 clean knives were in the sink. Everything looked like it started as a normal evening.
But when her body was later examined, they found 20 stab wounds in total, 10 of them in the back of her neck that wasn't noticed at the scene. That alone stopped a lot of people in their tracks. What happened inside this locked apartment?
At 6:42, Ellen was pronounced dead because of these fatal wounds. By 7:30, Sam's relatives, his uncle and cousin that he had been speaking with that day, arrived at the building. 1 minute later, an officer arrived and immediately requested the medical examiner's office. Now, I want to spend some time talking about the medical examiner's report, because these reports will become extremely important later. So at the scene, the investigators spoke to Sam and the police, where Sam reported that he left the apartment at around 4:45 to go to the gym, and when he returned, he found that the apartment was locked from the inside. After trying to contact Ellen through texts, calls, and emails, he forced entry into the apartment. There were no signs of a struggle, no valuables were missing, and no suicide note was found at the scene. No defensive injuries were noted, and the only sign of forced entry was the apartment door, where the door latch was detached. The snow on the patio was undisturbed, so no alternative means of entering the apartment were identified. At 8:30, detectives had arrived on the scene, and Ellen's case was officially opened. They noted Ellen's position, seated against the cabinets, eyeglasses on the floor, a white towel in her left hand, a hair tie still around her right wrist, and no personal effects nearby. Again, there were no signs of forced entry or a struggle. And by 9:20 p.m., homicide detectives from the Philadelphia Police Department joined the scene, and at 9:55 p.m., the medical examiner's investigator completed the on-scene assessment of Ellen's body. At 11:25 p.m., Sam Goldberg was transported by police to the Northwest Detectives Division for questioning. And at 3 a.m., Ellen's body was removed from the apartment for autopsy.
And I know some people have been asking about these gaps in time. There's almost a 2-hour gap between when the medical examiner finished their assessment and when Sam was finally taken in for questioning. And then another 3 to 4 hours before Ellen's body was removed.
And I mean, there could have been a few explanations for that. The scene could have still been being processed. There could have been delays in getting warrants, stuff like that. So by the time the sun came up, a woman had been found dead inside a locked apartment with 20 stab wounds and no sign that anyone else had been there. So police turned to questioning Sam Goldberg. During his questioning, Sam said that Ellen was already at home when he arrived home from work at about 1:30 that day. And while at home, Ellen was upset about her job and said that she wanted to quit, noting that Ellen had been stressed over work for the past couple of weeks. After offering some encouragement, Sam said that he left to use the gym, and Ellen was grading papers. And when he arrived back home, he gave the same story that was reported by the medical examiner. And so he forced entry into the apartment at about 6:30. And I'm going to say this now because it's important later. The police did not ask Sam if anyone witnessed him forcing entry into the apartment, and Sam never mentioned that anyone was with him during this time. In the hours after Ellen was pronounced dead, Sam immediately called his family, which triggered the arrival that I mentioned before. His uncle and cousin, they both arrived and they stayed at the scene while the investigators continued their work that night. But what happened in the following 24 hours would become one of the most controversial aspects of the entire case, because the next morning, January 27th, after there was about a foot of snow, before the autopsy was even completed, Sam's uncle, who, remember, is an attorney, contacted the property manager asking for access to the apartment so that they could retrieve Sam's clothing and personal belongings. And according to records, that request was granted, and Ellen's phone, laptop, and purse were removed from the apartment.
Which makes me wonder why these things were so important to get out of that apartment. I mean, this is an active investigation. We don't even have a solid cause of death, manner of death, or anything yet. So why is anyone even being let into the apartment, let alone to be able to take? I mean, this was her personal laptop, her personal cell phone, those types of things. And I think this all comes down to the fact that the investigators ruled this as a suicide early on. I mean, the whole thing is just insane to me.
And, it's exactly like the Heather Turner case. This same kind of thing happened. And what's worse is that apparently the property manager also arranged a crime scene cleanup, reportedly with instruction from a police contact, meaning that if the police had to go back at any point to collect more evidence, most of it would be gone. Just from that, it's pretty clear to me that it had already been decided this was a suicide.
And this will be important later on, and I think we cover this, but for instance, those messages where she searched how to take her own life or a painless death, those messages were found after those laptops were taken home. So, I mean, this isn't even information that could be used in court, let alone can we really trust the time that those messages were sent or these things were searched? Because all of that could have been messed with.
Yeah, it could have been tampered with. Now, that same day, Ellen's poor, devastated parents, they were being interviewed by the medical examiner's office investigator, where they relayed their last communication with Ellen. They said that they had spoken to Ellen the morning of, where Ellen gave no indication that something was wrong. They talked about her history with mental health problems and how she had been seeing a psychiatrist, and how the day of Ellen's death was the day grades were due for her students. The parents also denied having any concerns about Ellen and Sam's relationship, saying that they were happy to have Sam as an in-law and describing him as a fine young man. They didn't have any knowledge of any physical or verbal abuse between them, or of any previous suicidal thoughts or attempts from Ellen. Upon an interview with Ellen's psychiatrist, they mimicked the same thoughts and concerns, but said that Ellen never expressed any concern about her relationship with Sam, denying any abuse and having nothing but good things to say about her fiancé.
And that's so important in this case because people have questioned everything about Ellen and Sam's relationship, whether there were warning signs or tensions that no one picked up on. But at the least now, no one gave any indication that Ellen was in danger while in the relationship with Sam. But at the same time, everyone described Ellen as anxious but not suicidal. She was stressed but still planning for the future. So when it comes to this crime scene, the question of homicide really only leaves one suspect. But suicide doesn't make total sense either.
Exactly, and that's what people are battling with right now. So hopefully the autopsy report will bring a little clarity. And I want to give a disclaimer here because we're going to talk about the details of Ellen's injuries, which can be really uncomfortable for some people to listen to. The remains of Ellen were examined by the medical examiner's office on January 27th at 9 a.m. by Dr. Marlon Osborne. He noted 20 stab and incised wounds on Ellen's chest, abdomen, posterior scalp, and neck, which just means the back of her head and neck. And they were all described as having soft tissue hemorrhage, which means that she was still alive when these wounds were inflicted. 8 of these stab wounds were very shallow, with only superficial soft tissue injury, and 5 were almost an inch deep, with no vital structures injured. 1 wound was more than an inch deep, but it did not cause any vital damage. The 5 remaining stab wounds were the ones that were most notable. The first of the remaining 5 stab wounds perforated Ellen's heart and lung, which was the one that the knife was recovered from. The second perforated Ellen's chest and liver, and the third perforated Ellen's abdomen, causing hemorrhaging in various locations in her body. The 4th and 5th stab wounds perforated the back of her skull and neck at 8 to 7 centimeters deep, causing significant and fatal damage. What's most alarming about this report is that there were multiple contusions or bruises found on Ellen's arms, abdomen, and legs, which were in various stages of resolution, meaning they were sustained at different times in the days or even weeks before her death, and they were all in different stages of healing.
So that means that these injuries weren't all from that night. Like, these could have been past injuries. They were in various stages of healing. Like, this could have been something completely different. But either way, this is definitely a red flag that deserves more attention, more questioning.
Exactly. And for many experts who've looked at this case over the years, that detail alone, combined with the number and placement of the stab wounds, makes the idea of suicide nearly impossible to reconcile. I mean, some of these were to the back of the head and the neck, and these multiple bruises, they don't seem to indicate spontaneous self-harm. But we'll talk more about that later. So let's keep going through the facts. The most important thing here is that following Ellen's autopsy, Dr. Osborne certified that the cause of death was multiple stab wounds and that the manner of death was homicide.
Which, to me, this is kind of obvious. Suicides involving sharp force are very rare, with some research saying that they account for about 2% of all suicides. In those rare cases, the wounds tend to be in locations that the person can reach easily, and more often involve superficial or simple injury patterns.
Right. And if we're just talking about just the sheer practicality of self-inflicting a wound to the back of the head and the neck, especially at 7 and 8 centimeters, the literature identifies this as strongly predictive of homicide. People on the internet have actually done demonstrations where they try with a safe object to inflict the wound in the same way that Ellen would have had to, and they found it pretty much impossible. So homicide seems like the correct ruling. But in the days that followed Ellen's autopsy, things started to shift. Police returned to the apartment to collect additional evidence like Ellen's engagement ring, her grade books, and other teaching materials, and also an envelope labeled trip money. The next day, they collected 3 laptop computers and Ellen's phone from what they said was a male relative of Ellen's fiancé, and they were all submitted for forensic analysis.
Okay, so I'm going to assume that this male relative was the uncle, the attorney of Sam's, right? And it's still weird to me that he took Ellen's phone and purse out of the apartment. But okay, continue.
Yeah, what was the point of that? What was the point of doing that?
Yeah, and the fact that he's an attorney makes me feel like it's calculated in some way, or at least could be.
The funeral service, it was held at 1 p.m. Friday, January 28th, 2011 for Ellen. And the family gathered. And according to the docuseries on Hulu, Death in Apartment 603, there were mentions from friends and family that described her fiancé, Sam, as crying out loud, sobbing, in an observation that he was in this state of disbelief. Meanwhile, it was during Ellen's funeral when a relative of Ellen's got news that her case was being looked at as a possible homicide. And how they found out? Through the news. So supposedly Ellen's parents were not informed by any professional, but was told her story was on the news. And this was all devastatingly brought to their attention on the day of their daughter's funeral.
It's awful.
And the next day on January 29th of 2011, the Philadelphia police said that they were leaning towards suicide and reassured the public that there wasn't a maniac on the loose, a statement that stunned Ellen's family. It was the first time the idea of suicide appeared publicly in connection with Ellen's case, and it shocked her family. This was just 3 days after her death, before the full forensic results even came in. Police started interviewing several of Ellen's friends. Each of them described her as stressed and anxious about her teaching job, mentioning how overwhelmed she had seemed in the weeks before her death.
And it seems like that's what became the backbone of the police narrative from that point forward, which is what a lot of people have said in the light of these new developments in the case.
Yes, and it's honestly so shocking what happens as this case unfolds. So on February 1st of 2011, police, they collected additional forensic evidence from the apartment. There were swabs that were taken of several brown stains found on the kitchen cabinet, freezer door handle, and countertop, all of which were submitted for testing to see if they contained blood. Then, just a few days later, a paramedic who had responded to the 911 call gave the account of what they saw that night inside the Venice lofts. The medic described Sam Goldberg sitting in the 6th floor hallway when they arrived, and he was wearing a blue t-shirt, gray sweatpants, and according to the report, he looked shocked and confused. As the medic headed towards the apartment, he overheard Sam asking the property manager if Ellen was breathing. When the medic entered the kitchen and saw Ellen, they pronounced her dead at the scene. And when they told Sam the news, he reportedly slid down the hallway wall, collapsing on the floor, saying that he couldn't believe it, that they had just sent out save-the-date cards for their wedding.
And I don't want to say too much here, but it almost seems like he's now putting on a show. Because during that 911 call, he was so calm and almost disconnected to the victim. Like, there was a second when we were first learning about this case where I didn't even know if this was his fiance because it was so disconnected. But now he's like, the police are here, the paramedics are here, and it's like, oh my God, we were going to get married. I can't believe it. And I'm going to dramatically slide down the wall. It's weird to me.
It is. And you know, in that police call, whenever the dispatcher is trying to tell him to do CPR and he's like, kind of like hesitant, like, oh, really? Like, I guess I gotta do it, right? Even though she appears to be dead. Like, okay, I guess. It's very strange. Now, the next day, police decided to interview Sam Goldberg a second time. And he told investigators that he hadn't forced his way into the apartment sooner because he assumed Ellen might have been in the shower, wearing headphones, or maybe napping. And according to him, Ellen would sometimes latch the door shut when she went to bed or when he was out of town, but not usually when he just went downstairs to the gym. He also told police that while he was trying to get into the apartment, he spoke with a neighbor in the hallway. That neighbor suggested that Sam go to the front desk to get a spare key, but Sam said he already had his keys, but that the swing latch was secured from the inside. And when he forced entry into the apartment, he didn't notice the large kitchen knife sticking out of Ellen's chest until he began trying to administer CPR.
And this adds weight to the locked room theory, which made police lean towards suicide. But others have argued that those latches can be manipulated or relatched after the fact. And people have also questioned the fact that Sam really didn't see a large kitchen knife sticking out of Ellen's chest. I mean, you can hear in the 911 call that he's explaining that he's trying to get her sweatshirt off and that the zipper's just kind of stuck. And then he sounds very surprised by the fact that there's a knife sticking out of her chest. But if you look at the pictures, I mean, this knife is really sticking out. I mean, this knife is almost 4 inches into her heart. The handle is sticking out almost the same.
Yeah, I mean, there are a ton of theories and discourse about how the latch could have been manipulated or even relatched from the outside, and also about Sam's involvement in this entire thing. But this is Sam's version of events. While at the station that day, Sam also voluntarily provided a DNA sample to be compared with any evidence collected from the apartment. So let's talk about that forensic evidence. As we said before, police collected 3 swabs from the kitchen. 1 from an upper cabinet near the microwave, 1 from the freezer handle, and 1 from the countertop near the stove. All 3 swabs came back positive for human blood. The knife recovered from Ellen's chest was processed for prints, where technicians found 2 partial non-usable prints, meaning there wasn't enough detail to identify either of the prints. As far as DNA testing, which included swabs from Ellen's clothing, the knife handle, Ellen's fingernails, and other potential contact surfaces, testing only found Ellen's DNA, with the exception of Sam's DNA on her clothes, which doesn't really tell us anything since, they lived together.
So no foreign DNA, no clear fingerprints, and no evidence of anyone else being in the apartment at the time of Ellen's death. But suicide seems so impossible for so many reasons. But these findings, they just confirm that for the police.
Yeah, and the forensic analysis of the computers in the apartment didn't do much to add any clarity. Sam's laptop didn't yield anything relating to Ellen, but on Ellen's laptop, there were multiple files that appeared under the keywords depressed, suicide, and suicide methods. So this was enough to reinforce the theory that police were building. Combined with her history of anxiety and the lack of defensive wounds, DNA, or fingerprints, those computer results gave a lot of justification to shift the narrative to suicide.
Which, this is kind of what we started to talk about before. These were items that were taken out of the apartment before they were ever searched by police. Which, I mean, I work in computers and things like that. There are definitely ways to manipulate that data to show that a search happened at a different time, or even just removing search history or other data from those devices. Which, not to mention, that doesn't excuse the bruises that were in different stages of healing. The impossible wounds to self-inflict, the ones in the back of her head. And the fact that it seemed like Ellen was right in the middle of making a fruit salad. That doesn't seem like something that someone who is suicidal would be making.
Right, you're in the middle of washing blueberries and cutting up fruit. And we're told this is the moment that Ellen decided, I'm going to stab myself 20 times, half of them to the back of my head and neck, which, I mean, it just doesn't really seem possible to even pull that off. It just doesn't make sense.
I know.
But between March and April of 2011, investigators, prosecutors, and the medical examiner's office held a meeting that would permanently change the direction of the case. In that meeting, Dr. Osborne changed Ellen's manner of death from homicide to suicide, and her death certificate was officially amended on March 7th of 2011. And the investigators later said that the change came after the review of computer forensics. Then, on April 15th, the medical examiner's office revised its official report again, this time noting that the building's doorman was present when Sam Goldberg forced entry into the apartment. Remember that this was never noted or mentioned by anyone during the initial investigation of the case. Police even interviewed the doorman himself shortly after Ellen's death. He also never mentioned being with Sam when he forced entry into the apartment.
It's almost unheard of for a medical examiner to reverse a ruling from homicide to suicide. The opposite happens sometimes, a suicide later proven to be a homicide. But homicide rulings are made very carefully. They're not declared lightly. Forensic death investigation expert John Scott Morgan made this very clear in interviews, while also saying that he's only ever seen one case in his whole career where a person took their life by stabbing.
And another part of this is that time is the enemy of truth. The sooner you collect evidence and talk to witnesses, the more reliable the information is. That's why police interviews happen as soon as possible. Human memory degrades so quickly. So for the medical examiner to revise his report after the fact and say that the doorman was present during Sam's forced entry was strange. And this was a detail that was later proven false by surveillance footage and sworn statements.
It's interesting.
And obviously this news just baffled Ellen's parents and family. They just could not believe that Ellen's case was being handled this way. And they weren't going to accept that Ellen did this to herself. So the family began to fight back to obtain the autopsy report and also the crime scene photos. And they sought independent expert findings in Ellen's case. One of these was Dr. Cyril Wecht. On January 11th of 2012, almost a year after Ellen's death, Dr. Wecht issued a consultative report after reviewing the autopsy findings, photographs, the medical examiner's investigative notes, and Ellen's psychiatric records. Dr. Wecht wrote that suicides by stabbing rarely involve multiple stab wounds, and that stab wounds to the back of the head or neck are highly unlikely to be self-inflicted. He noted that most suicide cases involving knives, victims often start with tentative cuts or shallow hesitation wounds to test how much pain they can tolerate, and then they deliver a single fatal stab, most often to the chest or the abdomen.
Right, and Dr. Wecht also pointed out that Ellen's body showed no hesitation marks, that she had no history of suicidal behavior, and that she left no note, which is common in suicides that involve such violent means. He also added that the stab wounds went through her clothes. In suicide cases, victims rarely stab through fabric. they always remove or open the clothing first.
So all in all, Dr. Wecht's conclusion, it was blunt. He wrote that based upon a reasonable degree of medical certainty, the manner of death is strongly suspicious of homicide. And throughout the years of these conclusions, they were echoed by many other experts in the field. In October of 2016, Dr. Wayne Ross, a Pennsylvania forensic pathologist, he issued a formal letter to attorney Thomas P. Brennan, where he wrote that it was his opinion, to a reasonable degree of medical certainty, that the manner of death was homicide. Just a few months after his initial statement, Dr. Wayne Ross conducted a much more detailed forensic review. On January 10th of 2017, he issued a full consultative report after examining retained tissue samples from Ellen's autopsy, as well as scene photographs, autopsy photographs, and the original autopsy report. Dr. Ross wrote that one of the stab wounds penetrated Ellen's skull cavity, damaging her cranial nerves and part of her brain. He also noted that this kind of wound would have caused severe pain and immediate neurological dysfunction, things like disorientation, loss of motor control, or even unconsciousness.
So basically, to sum this up, that means that she would have been completely immobilized, preventing herself from stabbing herself more. And remember, this is 20 stab wounds. So if she did that to herself, she couldn't have continued to stab herself.
Right, and Dr. Ross also noted the presence of fingernail marks on the front of Ellen's neck, as well as multiple bruises beneath the surface, including in the strap muscles on the right side of her neck. He concluded that those findings were evidence of strangulation consistent with manual pressure applied to the throat.
So none of that is consistent with the suicide theory. It's more consistent with an assault. And he also described the bruises in various states of healing on her body, which he said was consistent with a repeated beating.
Yep. And his final conclusion was that the scene findings were indicative of a homicide. But this isn't even the end of the overwhelming evidence from multiple experts. By the spring of 2017, another professional review added even more doubt to the official story, this time from a law enforcement perspective. Detective Scott Eelman, a veteran investigator, completed his consultative report after reviewing the autopsy photographs, the scene photographs, the full autopsy report, the medical examiner's investigative notes, and the findings of Dr. Wecht. His analysis focused on the blood evidence, what it revealed about the position of Ellen's body, and whether it matched how she was found. And Detective Eelman wrote that the blood stains on Ellen's face were inconsistent with the position she was in when first discovered. In other words, the way the blood had flown on her skin, it didn't align with her body's final posture.
And that's a huge deal because that's how gravity works. I mean, blood follows gravity, so if it didn't line up, that probably means that the body was moved after her injuries occurred.
Exactly. Eelman also noted that the blood stains on the front of Ellen's clothing were consistent with her being seated with her head tipped forward when those stains were made. But on the floor, the blood staining was minimal, far less than you would expect in a violent stabbing. And he also observed a patterned blood stain near Ellen's right hand that appeared similar to a shoe print or some kind of object impression. And he pointed out that if that mark had been made by Ellen's own boot, there should have been other pattern prints leading away from it, but there weren't. In his conclusion, Detective Eelman wrote that Ellen was not in the position in which she was found when the injuries occurred. And that calls into question everything that was determined based on the original layout. The theory of suicide is becoming harder and harder to defend. But the Greenbergs, they weren't done yet. By early 2018, the Greenberg family enlisted one of the most respected forensic scientists in the world, Dr. Henry Lee of the Henry C. Lee Institute of Forensic Science, along with his colleague Elaine Pagliario. And what stood out most in their observation was that the blood was flowing in different directions on Ellen's face, suggesting she moved after sustaining the bleeding injuries. They said that their conclusion was that Ellen was initially standing when she was attacked, and then she fell, based on swiping marks of the blood on the cabinets, directly contradicting the idea that she quietly stabbed herself 20 times in one spot. And his final conclusion was that the number and the type of wounds and the bloodstain patterns observed are consistent with a homicide scene.
And it just keeps piling up. Multiple experts, years apart, are independently reviewing the same material, and every single one of them came to the same conclusion, that this was homicide. And the question is, what really happened?
So by 2019, the Greenberg family, they had spent 8 years gathering expert opinions, independent analysis, and forensic reviews, all pointing towards the same conclusion that Ellen's death could not have been a suicide. In June of 2019, they submitted all of those reports to the Philadelphia Medical Examiner's Office, formally requesting that Ellen's death certificate to be reconsidered. But what came next only deepened the mystery. Because in August of 2019, Dr. Lindsay Emery, a forensic pathologist with the Chester County Coroner's Office, found that due to the nature of the wounds and the lack of hemorrhaging, one of the stab wounds to Ellen's spine was inflicted after her death.
And that's the icing on the cake. It confirms what Ellen's parents have believed for years, that the physical evidence in this case didn't just contradict the suicide theory. It completely tore it down. It's really hard for someone to stab themselves after they're already dead. You'd think by now that the medical examiner couldn't ignore that.
You would think, but no, nothing came out of these findings. So on October 15th, 2019, the Greenbergs filed a civil lawsuit against the city of Philadelphia and the medical examiner's office, demanding that Ellen's death be reclassified from suicide to homicide, or at least undetermined. And that lawsuit brought something else to light: contradiction in the accounts given by people at the scene that night. The doorman, Philip Hanton, he filed a declaration that directly contradicted Sam Goldberg's version of events. Sam had said that Hanton helped him when he couldn't get inside the apartment, but Hanton swore that he never accompanied Sam upstairs. He said he stayed in the lobby the entire time, which was later confirmed by surveillance footage showing Sam entering the elevator alone.
And that's one of the most frustrating parts of this case. So much information made its way into the official record. And Ellen's parents, they shouldn't have to fight this hard to get to the truth.
Yeah, it's extremely heartbreaking. By late 2019, the case had turned into a full-blown legal fight, one that would last for years. In January of 2020, a judge allowed the case to be processed to trial, but the pandemic shut down court operations across Pennsylvania, putting everything on hold for months. Still, the Greenbergs didn't stop, but neither did the state, filing appeals, attempting to halt the proceedings. For the next 3 years, the Greenbergs, they would endure endless hoops, transfers, and attempts to keep this case buried, but still fought back and forth with more independent reviews, reports, and analyses. But by 2024, more than 13 years after Ellen's death, the case had reached the highest levels of Pennsylvania's court system. In July of 2024, the Pennsylvania Supreme Court agreed to hear the Greenberg family's appeal, reopening the door for a potential challenge to the ruling of suicide. Then in August, the court formally accepted the case and agreed to hear arguments questioning the 2011 reversal from homicide to suicide. On December 11th, Judge Michael Erdish described the original 2011 decision to change Ellen's manner of death from homicide to suicide as baffling.
And I don't blame him. I mean, this just feels like a complete circus at this point. This is somebody's life, a family's daughter that they lost, and they're having to spend over a decade to get justice for what happened to her. And meanwhile, no criminal charges are being filed, and no investigation into who did this is going on.
And after Judge Erdish publicly questioned the original ruling, the conversation around Ellen's case erupted once again. And for the first time in years, Sam Goldberg broke his silence. He said that when Ellen took her life, it left him bewildered, saying that he had to endure the unimaginable passing of his future wife and the pathetic, despicable attempts to desecrate his reputation by creating a narrative that embraces lies, distortions, and falsehoods in order to avoid the truth. He continued that mental illness is very real and it has many victims. He said that he hopes and prays that no one ever has to go through what he did, losing someone they love to a terrible disease, and then be accused by ignorant and misinformed people of causing her death. By February of this year, in 2025, which is insane, the city of Philadelphia reached a settlement with Ellen Greenberg's parents. As part of the agreement, the city paid the Greenbergs $650,000 and agreed to reevaluate Ellen's manner of death. But of course, this story doesn't end there. Amazingly, Dr. Osborne, the original medical examiner who ruled Ellen's death a suicide, re-examined the evidence in the case and signed a document stating that it was his professional opinion that Ellen's manner of death should be designated as something other than suicide. So, a small victory for them. But by June of 2025, the Greenbergs received not a single update about Ellen's case. So in August, just 2 months ago, the Greenbergs filed a motion to enforce the settlement, telling the court that the re-examination hadn't even begun and that they hadn't received a single update from the city. When asked for comment, a city spokesperson responded only that Philadelphia will fulfill its obligations in due course.
And the circus continues. And how disappointing, honestly. 14 years and the Greenbergs are still waiting for a real answer. Still waiting for someone to explain how a homicide became a suicide and why no one has ever been able to make sense of that.
Yeah, and just recently on September 3rd, the Greenbergs were back in court where Judge Carpenter openly criticized the city of Philadelphia for its months-long delay in carrying out the promised review of Ellen's case. He said that under no one's definition is 6 months expeditious, adding that he didn't understand why this couldn't be changed to undetermined from the beginning. The hearing was continued to October 14th of 2025, but before then, the Philadelphia Medical Examiner's Office released a 32-page review led by Dr. Lindsay Simon. Dr. Simon wrote that Ellen sustained 23 total stab injuries, including bruises of varying ages, but that she showed no defensive wounds or foreign DNA. The review also acknowledged the internal neck hemorrhages, but said that they did not constitute evidence of assault. In her conclusion, Dr. Simon wrote that Ellen's injuries were not inconsistent with self-infliction, affirming the ruling of suicide.
Ellen's parents and their attorney called the review deeply flawed and shameful, ignoring years of independent analysis and critical pieces of evidence that could have changed the outcome. They cited unreleased surveillance footage, 3D mapping, and reenactment that demonstrated the impossibility of achieving the injury angles with self-infliction.
Sandy Greenberg, Ellen's mother, said that she was kicked in the stomach and dumbfounded by these results on October 14th, saying that she couldn't talk for 2 days and she couldn't read the report. She said that she doesn't know what her future options are, but that they are not going away and not giving up. That day on October 14th, the Greenbergs attended a remote hearing with Philadelphia Common Pleas Court Judge Linda Carpenter about the completion of Dr. Simon's report, which marked the end of the Greenbergs' lawsuit with the city. Josh Greenberg, Ellen's father, said that he believed that somebody got away with murder, and I honestly don't know where to go from here. Sandy said it perfectly. It's a kick in the gut. And in my opinion, a decision that shows that the city is more interested in being right than being just.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, the strength that they're showing through this is amazing. Sandy said that even though there's a period on the sentence, that doesn't mean they'll ever forget their daughter or what happened to her. Josh Greenberg said they're going to be fighting as long as possible to find out what happened.
And that's where we are right now. If you want to receive updates on this case, you can follow the Justice for Ellen Facebook page, which is being updated very frequently in light of these new developments. There's even a new release on October 20th where Ellen's parents talk a little bit more about their communications with Sam Goldberg since Ellen's life so tragically ended. Thank you all so much for listening to this week's episode of Crime Salad. We want to thank Ellen's family for continuing to share her story and for reminding us that justice doesn't stop just because time passes. We will see you next week.
Crime Salad is a Black Cat production. To find out more, check out blackcat.fm.